All right, Casey, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been a while since I tried to have you on. You're a super busy man. I appreciate your time. I want to learn as much as possible from you. You scaled recruitment businesses. You're now, head of a product, leading ZooKeep out there. Definitely want to deep dive on that. Before I get into that, I want to ask you a question. How would you describe yourself without talking about work, without talking
Without
about
talking about work.
titles? Yeah.
I think first and foremost, I'm a dad. I've got two lovely little girls. I'm super proud of them. Before starting work, I would have said I was a jock and a bookworm at the same time. So I love sports. I grew up playing every American sport possible as the all-American boy. So basketball, football, baseball, track and field. But I'm inherently really curious and like to read about a bunch of different stuff, like to travel the world. So yeah, I'm kind of like a curious journeyman jock that somehow ended up in central Tokyo 20 years ago.
Yeah. What do you like to read about?
I'm more of a nonfiction guy. I like history. I like anthropology, psychology. I do like stuff around kind of current events, trends. I like economics. And to be honest with you, the last 3 years I've read a lot about kind of software development, and product businesses, because it's my first time building one. So I'm kind of sticking my nose into every single thing that I can.
Yeah, I can imagine. Before we started the chat, I literally told you this, right? But I look at people like you and I'm like, you scaled several recruitment agencies. That's hard. You just now get into like product and software, which I feel like a lot of people in recruitment want to do or try and fail. So my first question is like, how do you stay that driven? Especially you're a father, you're busy, and I'm pretty sure you don't have to work that hard. Like, how do you stay that driven and motivated?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't have a direct answer. I mean, I think part of this is intrinsic. I think it's in there. I was always pretty competitive as a kid, hence, I was a bit of a jock. I was an athlete. One of the most fun things that I like professionally is going from a state of complete abstract, zero, nothing, to trying to put something of structure together. To me, that's the most fun, like 0 to 1 and maybe 1 to 10. And then post that, like I'm not super corporate in that sense. So I think part of it's that. I don't know. I think on a deeper level, I'm not like Ivy League elite. And I do think that there's a little chip on my shoulder that wants to kind of prove that, you can be from a really small town in Ohio and like do cool stuff. So there's that side of it. But then I'd argue the other side of it is the really deep sense of accountability to what we have already built. So the first time building was really, really stressful and really hard. But once you kind of get it up and get it moving, that drives you as well to kind of like protect whatever it is you have built or the people that you're working with, et cetera, as well. So like I think like motivations change, and like the reason why I do certain things now today are totally different to why I did them like 10 years ago.
Mm.
But there is that kind of inner burning kind of desire to try to like either do something interesting, fun, or go from a state of zero to a state of, oh, it exists, that I just can't turn it off, to be honest with you.
What made you decide to go for software? Because I feel like there's probably a lot of people who told you it was a bad idea at first, or that
They
it's
still
like
do.
super hard. What made you decide like, okay, this is the right timing? I feel like it's probably something that took a while to also kickstart. Like, walk me through the
Yeah.
journey, like the
Um,
zero phase, so to speak.
oh, I mean, it's riddled in mistakes and poor decisions and kind of, figuring ourselves through it. But I think the initial kind of thought process was just trying, like, clearly outside of Japan, everything, even pre-pandemic, 2016, 17, 18, like the technology that was coming out of the West at that time, especially, products like Smart Recruiters, Lever, Workable, these like really good modern products. It was super crystal clear that like this is the direction that the space is moving in. So I think just from the strategist inside of me, it was like, it's coming. It's just a matter of when, not if. So, I've been looking at the space now for over 10 years, with an eye on it. So like that's one side of it. Another side of it was attempting to kind of scale impact or scale knowledge, more systemically, as opposed to kind of doing one-off project work in recruiting. Recruiting only scales so far, especially on an individual basis. Even if you build the team up and build a huge organization, it still only scales to the capacity of that team, right? But then, and I think this is even way deeper than that. Growing up where I grew up in Ohio, I don't know if you know, it's called the Rust Belt, right? So the cities of that area would be like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Cleveland, Ohio, Detroit, Michigan, Buffalo, New York, and they're all called the Rust Belt because all the factories are rusted out. Because in the 80s, all the jobs were basically offshored. to Mexico,
Right.
to China, to Japan. And ultimately, like, first of all, the impact of that was the middle class got massively hollowed out. Crime rates increased significantly. Drug usage increased significantly. Got 4 people that I went to high school with that have died from heroin overdoses. And so not to like over index on this, but it is real. Like the Rust Belt had very, very real societal impact from the hollowing out of the middle class losing jobs. And in the pandemic, I think as a lot of people laying around trying to figure out what the hell to do with the rest of my life and where you want to focus your efforts, one thing I kept coming back to is just how well Japan has treated me and how good life in Japan has always been. And I think part of it points back to a really robust middle class that's arguably overprotected, but it is protected, but it does exist. And I think it provides societal stability. But, having worked with some of Japan's biggest manufacturers on a lot of kind of talent initiatives and a lot of issues, and then traveling throughout the country, especially if you get outside of central Tokyo, like there's parts of the country that could look like Southeast Asia as well. I mean, it's struggling in certain areas, and there's systemic uncompetitive advantages due to, I think, how organizations are structured and operated that I think could become a societal. And if you go to the biggest level, I think it become like a national defense level issue with the hollowing out of rural communities and jobs, et cetera. So, the deeper reason why we decided to go into software or attempt to go kind of into this direction was to try to address more structurally like organizational or talent competitiveness of Japan Inc. as a way of us to attempt to try to give back and distill kind of this like global competitiveness on Japan and try to protect that. So that was kind of like where we started with it, like that. We were toying with the idea for 3 years, and we had some developers on the side and we were spending some money with ideas, but it was really in the pandemic kind of sitting around thinking about what to do that we decided to do that. Now, fast forwarding, and we're, 2.5 or 3 years into this thing. And I think the hypothesis around Japan Inc. is as valid today as it was. It's probably more valid today than it was 3 years ago. But the other thing that we've discovered now is like building product for Japanese corporates is almost like building a proxy for global laggards in technology and talent. And so what we found is like,
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. And so when you think about digital literacy of talent teams or organizations, and also if you think around like modern talent literacy and then all the impacts of what AI and stuff could have, and how do you optimize your workforce? Do you hire? Do you bring in contractors? Do you do a gig? Do you turn the job into a bot? There's buy, build, borrow, bot is this kind of framework everybody's kind of using in the West. The same exact thing that we're building for Japanese enterprise is almost off the shelf. What's needed for mid-market manufacturers in the US is something that we've discovered the last 9 months. And so the deeper that we're digging into this, and we set out with this initially kind of big mission to kind of help Japan modernize, which we still want to do. But there are barriers to that, especially their speed of decision making. What we've also found now is like we're actually competing against competitors that have raised literally 100x what we've raised and winning in the US or the UK or in Malaysia and these other markets. So we actually now are increasingly building conviction around this kind of Japan Inc. as a proxy for the whole rest of the global economy that are laggards, both digitally or from like a talent sophistication perspective. And we think like the TAM, the addressable market of that is probably infinitely higher today than the most bleeding edge, cutting edge AI stuff that can maybe do like some sort of like voice bot or something like that. But that's a pretty sophisticated solution, right? Yeah. So it's interesting. And so like it's kind of funny. Like it's kind of like Paulo Coelho, right? Like I'm kind of coming back to where I started. And like
Santiago, is that what you're referring to?
No, God, the book isn't coming to me. Why is it not coming to me? On Google.
Yeah.
I know the book. It's a really famous book. Coelho book. The Alchemist. It's The Alchemist.
The Alchemist, yeah. It's the story of Santiago. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the story of Santiago. And like you go on this journey looking for this this alchemy, but then you end up coming back to the tree that you started under, right?
And so I read it like 2 years ago, and I read it again.
I read it like 25 years ago. That's why it didn't come to me, right? But like, it's funny because I was just back home in Ohio where I grew up, and it's like I was talking to some local industrial companies, and their problem statements are identical. Like they need exactly what I'm building in Japan. And what we're finding is straight off the shelf, like you don't need localization outside of maybe like few integrations, but like the core product itself, like everybody has this notion that like you build something for Japan and it's for Japan and it's Japan UI. But increasingly you don't have to do that. And so I think like this Japanese enterprise is a proxy for global laggards in a number of different kind of like back office verticals is increasingly becoming something that
Yeah.
makes sense. And so that's what we're focused on now.
Interesting. Can you, from my perspective, I mean, I actually looked into your website recently and it changed a lot. It looks really good now, man. I remember like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago.
It was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I was not going to say it that way, but it
No, yeah,
looked,
I would.
the colors and everything looked a bit
Yeah,
weird. But now it
yeah,
looks really good. Actually, I was looking. I was like, the whole thing is looks so much better. From my understanding, you guys are basically an all-in-one solution, right? Like in terms of like an ATS, and like you can also have a very good visual support on how the pipeline is moving and everything. What makes you guys? Because this is a very somehow crowded space, I think, as well. Extremely, right? Like
yeah,
I know some people try. You know, I when I started my company, I was like very naive. I'm like, I'm gonna build this because that's gonna be my way to get into the companies. And then yeah, okay, never mind. It's
yeah,
super hard. And I use Zoho Recruit right now.
yeah,
And it's not bad, but it's never exactly what you need. And like,
right.
what is your competitive advantage compared to the rest of the market? And like, maybe I missed something about ZooKeep as well. So walk me through the product.
Sure. So right now we still only have our one product right now. We're planning on a second product maybe next year. But look, like in a vacuum, the ATS market is very bloody. There's tons of competitors, but yet somehow you keep seeing like companies coming out of YC that are making an ATS. And I
Yeah.
think that there's a deeper question as to like kind of why they keep coming out. And like one, the market's super fragmented and recruiting workflows are not as standardized as accounting workflows, just for example. So you do need different products for different types of needs. And then clearly different segments have different needs around security, but specifically drilling down into our product, I think the things that make us unique today, and it goes to kind of our design philosophies that we started out with. First of all, like we want to make vodka, not gin. And so what I mean by that is you want to distill every impurity out of it. So cut all of the noise. And we think that recruiting tech and HR tech in general is just completely full of noise at the moment. There's so much noise on like the things that you might be able to do and vibe code this thing and vibe code that thing and AI this. But the actual reality, and you know this, is like your average recruiter uses like 10 to 20% of the functionality of the systems that they're paying to maintain, right? So what that
Yeah.
means is especially in the context of selling to Japanese enterprises who historically have not done a lot of mid-career hiring. What we see with the domestic competitors is the UI UX is too complicated. The dashboards are incredibly difficult to access insights from, and the data entry is incredibly painful for the non-power users, hiring managers, interviewers, etc. So what actually ends up happening is like the organ rejects the body and they just don't use the system. So then you're spending all this money on this system, on this implementation. Nobody uses it other than maybe the 3 recruiters or 5 recruiters. All of the data entry gets pushed on them. So then they need to hire Hakken or contractors to do data entry for them. And the ROI on that system implementation is absolutely horrific. And it never delivers the promised ROI. And so right now, specifically in the Japanese market, the way that we're positioning ourselves is, first of all, extremely high accessibility, easy to use. You bring in all of the stakeholders onto the platform to drive alignment. Out of the box, highly contextualized insights. So no like random spider graphs and bar graphs and crap all over the place with data just kind of vomiting all over users. We want to actually help the users storytell with the data. So our head of product was the head of tech and engineering or tech and product engineering for Google for 7 years before he joined us, Jordan.
Nice.
Fantastic brain, one of the top thinkers in our space in Japan, I think. Maybe in Asia. And we came up with this concept of this super highly contextualized, out of the box. You don't need Tableau. You don't need to download everything to a CSV and use a BI tool like Looker or Tableau to understand what's happening. It's straight out of the box. And anybody, a hiring manager, an interviewer, a recruiter can look at that and understand where they are relative to where good is, what next actions could be to make it better. And so our whole thought process is high accessibility, and the platform itself is driving better performance. It's not a system of record, but it's actually the first step towards like a guided coach to get everybody on the same page. Because you've recruited forever, right? Like recruiting is a team sport. Like it's not a TA team's job, right?
Yeah.
So we think this out of the box
literally,
intelligence engine, this engine to drive alignment and clarity on like where challenges sit and where opportunities are, has a ton of compounding opportunities around alignment, around, not duplicating work to build reports and, having to hire an engineer full time to run your data pipelines to Tableau, and like, because we've seen that, right? So I think that's the Japan problem statement. And that's actually, in a lot of ways, that's what we found is resonating outside of Japan, is people they just want something that's like super clean and
Yeah.
super easy to get the job done, right?
I mean, the alignment that you mentioned is something. I was talking to a client maybe 2 weeks ago, and he was asking me like, why is it so expensive to hire in Japan? I'm like, one of the reasons for you guys, obviously the talent pool is super reduced, but it's just the alignment is so bad. Like the amount of people that just don't talk to each other and the time that we're wasting and the data input that you mentioned. This is something I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Like data input, I feel like is, why are we still doing the data input? Putting things in like in an SQL kind of way and like in rows and because what I'm trying to build, I mean, nothing works. Nothing works what I'm trying to do every day. But I try to really get to a point where I'm just dumping all my stuff from my email to my CRM, and it's doing a terrible job. Yeah, like a rack system kind of thing. And
Yeah.
isn't that where we're going? I mean, when the models are going to get better, and like, why are we still doing data
but
inputs
again,
the old way?
like, because that's what people are used to. And I think this
Right.
is like what the entire industry, the point that they're missing is like, even if the technology can get it done, there's a reason why even like some of my recruiters still have their own Excel spreadsheets. It's what they're used to. And
Yeah.
it's human nature. And so I think like the psychology of AI is something that I don't think is talked about enough. Like technologically, if it's possible, is not the debate anymore. And of course, like we're going to be leaning heavier into unstructured data sets and things like that as well, like 100%. But the cold hard reality on a lot of this, especially within the Japan context, is just the digital literacy is so low, or the
Mm,
trust of the system is low if it's too far advanced, that you can only move at the speed at which like enterprises can actually adopt.
yeah.
And so it depends on who you're selling to. And we're clearly like our primary target is enterprise. And then I would
Mm,
say our next target would be mid to late stage startups that are growing globally. Like we're not targeting SMB, we're not targeting recruiting agencies that much right now. So when you
yeah.
think about like those users, there's the user side of it where I think like the psychology of AI and like what's possible relative to like what people accept, that's a problem. The other problem then that you have, especially if you're working with public clients, is in and around the governance and the defensibility and the trust of what you're using, and understanding how or why the data is coming out the way that it's coming. And this has
Mm,
come up recently in a large deployment with one of our enterprise clients here. And so I agree 5,000% directionally we're going that way, unstructured
yeah.
data, etc. But there was a report by, it wasn't Warburg Pincus, Palmo Bravo, basically came out from their annual conference about 2 months ago, and they said that they think that 25% of all traditional SaaS products that will ever be deployed have been deployed. So they think that we're only a quarter of the way through classic non-AI SaaS.
Really?
Yes. And you can
That's
look it up.
interesting.
You can look it up. And so there's a hype train, right? This is noise. We're talking about the noise in the market, right?
Yeah.
This is exactly what we're talking about.
I mean, yeah, the whole SaaS is dead kind of noise and like, and I can see it. Like, I mean, but I'm not enterprise or like, I'm not at that scale at all. So I'm
Yeah,
very
yeah.
limited in my knowledge. But because I was literally talking with engineer friends, and we're also thinking about different startups and stuff. And we're like all about, SaaS is dead, and, everything is going to be customized, and that's going to be the next thing.
That's the hype train right there, right? And like,
Yeah.
at the smaller or at the individual level, I think that's going to come faster than later. And like, especially if you go back to the US or spend time in the US, like it's going nuts, but it's
Yeah.
not going nuts in the enterprise. And then if you look at like a lot of the data on the value delivered relative to what was predicted on these AI deployments in enterprise, like a lot of them are falling way, 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 way short. And that's why you're seeing tons of these YC cohorts failing from like 2 years ago. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
like, again, I don't think that the debate is the direction that we're going. It's not directional. It's the
That makes sense.
slope of the curve relative to the market segment that you're talking about.
Yeah. How do you guys protect yourself from noise? Because I imagine in a situation like yours, it can also be very dangerous, right? To hear the noise and like tomorrow you change your strategy, and like how do you kind of I guess, distinguish noise to not noise, and like, because it's crazy, man. I mean, the amount of FOMO there is
Yeah.
right now is insane. How do you, stick to your course and
I'm really glad
while
I'm not
still
a
being open-minded?
VC. I'm
Yeah.
really glad I'm not a VC being forced to be like a lemming and chase every AI deal on the market. That's for sure. Look, I think, your job as a leader is to, deliver conviction and make a bet with, the best information that you have at your fingertips and your cumulative experiences and judgment. I read about the AI stuff every day. I do share certain articles with the team from both sides of the argument, just to also kind of keep the team up to speed. But I think ultimately, right now, we're just completely focused on delivering value for existing and prospective customers where they need the value delivered, rather than going in and trying to change everything how they do it. And again, we're
Yeah.
selling to enterprise. Like I'm not selling to like 5-person SMBs. I think that'd be different, maybe, right? And they'd be like a little bit more, opportunistic on this type of stuff. But when you're selling with strict governance,
Hmm.
and you need strict data controls and you need defensibility. Our sole focus is just winning on deals and delivering the value that we promise, and like making sure that we don't underdeliver, right? And so I think that's a really good forcing function.
Casey, I'm also like curious, like, what kind of mental shift did you have to go through to move from service to SaaS? I don't see many people doing that. I actually don't know. You probably know some people in Japan and that
Yeah.
have done what you do, right? To move from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
recruitment agency to product. But I have actually only know you, I think, at this point.
I mean, I know a couple other people that are trying to do it, even globally, that are trying to do it. I mean, look, like I don't think the average recruiter understands the value that's at their fingertips in terms of, especially the good ones, like the networks that you have, the market insights that you have. I think a lot of us, like, especially in Japan, because the industry can get a bad rap at times, like we kind of put ourselves down in a way as an industry. And
Mm,
there are reasons for that historically, even still to this day. But I don't think that a lot of people put enough thought into what you can do with that if you kind of get a little bit creative. Especially if you're doing exec search, to be honest, or if you're an IT recruiter and 300 software engineers. Like
yeah.
most people don't know 300 software engineers, right? So
Mm,
I think you can create some unfair advantages around the talent that you need to procure if you want to do a startup, if you have conviction on what you're building, just based on your recruiter skills and the networks that you have. So we've done I think a really good job of leveraging our own internal skills to cover my weaknesses, because I clearly wasn't a product guy 3 years ago. So we had to consciously kind of hire around me to cover those blind spots. So one thing that I think is critical to make that transition is like surrounding yourself with people and being very, very humble and clear around what you suck at and what you can do, right?
yeah.
I think it's super important. So we did that. To sit here and tell you that I've completely figured it out on how to do like sustainable, defensible product go to market today in Japan, I'd be lying. Like
Yeah.
we're still leveraging heavily on the personal networks of myself and a couple other people, but that's enough work for us today, right? Like we're still
Yeah.
early. That's enough. But I mean, it's a total mindset shift in terms of how you drive the value. And to be honest, we do still have a component of the ZooKeep offering that we're delivering services, because a lot of clients need upskilling in their talent functions, or they need process redesign. So I am able to tap into my experiences there and continue to sell services that leads to product deployments, as
Yeah.
opposed to just like ripping the scab off and trying to like go completely straight product on something and like live or die by that, which I think, especially in the Japanese enterprise world, doesn't work.
Yeah, that's it. When I knew about you, I think we got connected through to Shina, or not sure anymore. But I already saw ZooKeep, and I always looked at it like, oh, this is very clever because you have those connections already, and you already deliver value, and you have like an amazing feedback loop as well, right? Like right away
Yep.
how your customer, and unfair advantages you mentioned. Like, what kind of weaknesses or like big gaps in your skills that you have to kind of work on in the beginning? Because my initial thought, even for InnoHive, I wanted to build product, and it failed first time. Now I'm educating myself a lot. I'm learning to code, and like, but the biggest issue that I personally had was to communicate my vision to technical people and accepting the limitations. Even like you say, the argument is not really about is it possible or not technically, right? Anyway, I'm rambling here, but like, what kind of
No,
gaps did you have to fill on your end to make things work out?
God, I had a ton of gaps. I think it's fair to say that like in general, recruiters are not the most structured workers.
Yeah.
We're used to constantly multitasking, and I'm literally looking at my how many tabs I have open right now, and it's like it's ridiculous. I'm glad you can't see my screen because but that's how we work, right? Like
Yeah.
we're synthesizers of information and data, and you're constantly connecting dots. But that does not work well when you're trying to like convey your product idea to somebody who has to break it down into a set of requirements and build it. So I think one of the biggest struggles that I had was, and still continue to fight, is like I'm really, really, really good at kicking up a humongous dust storm of activity and like finding whatever we find in that dust storm. Like I can kick up a ton of activity. But when you're doing kind of structured product development, you can't do that, right? And you can't come and bring 75 different ideas. So I think one thing is getting much more structured and deliberate in your communications with especially people touching product and engineering. That's one. And learning how to then go from that structured thought process and distill it down to its smallest core and know that you got to do version 0 before you can even do version 1. I think that's another thing that from like a product management perspective that just takes time to learn. So I'd say that's a really, really big one. Being non-technical, so not being a software engineer. I'm a sales and finance guy, probably in my DNA. Managing developers is very different,
How
right?
so?
Like just they're not as communicative, generally speaking, as us wild and loud and crazy and social recruiters are.
Mm.
And so you put certain types of expectations on communications and stuff that sometimes don't always come through. So that's one. Two, deferring technical decisions that you don't understand can lead to technical debt that will bite you down the road. If I could have done it again, I probably, even though I wouldn't code, I would have given myself a 3-month buffer of like just learn enough
Some
about the
boot
technical
camp
side.
or
Which today I kind of know enough. Like I can get
yeah.
through it, right? Like I'm not completely backwards, and I can sit with the engineering team and understand what they're doing and why and how. Like I can't go in and review the code base itself, but I definitely would have done that. One thing I
You
did.
guys on Python, right?
Currently, our backend is in Django. Yeah, Django
Okay.
Python. Yeah,
It's
and our front end's in
pretty
React.
easy to read, I guess. I mean,
Pretty standard, right?
yeah,
And if you open it up, it's not that hard. In
yeah.
university, I was learning SQL and stuff like that, so it's okay. But still, like if you're the CEO and it's on you, right? Like I would have put a little bit more of a buffer on that to just be a bit more educated. But like I feel today, I'm okay
Mm.
on that front. So yeah, I mean the gaps I think are kind of style of working, and especially when you're non-technical, trying to figure out ways to cover those blind spots are the big ones. The last one, the one that I didn't think I would struggle with, that I have struggled with, is product sales is very different than service sales. And it's amazing how you can work with a Japanese enterprise and sign a $500,000 recruiting agreement within 6 months, but spend 24 months trying to sell them a $10,000 software package. Because it's not about the dollars, right? It's about the risk, it's about the dependencies, it's about everything else, right? So the product sales process to enterprise in Japan
Mm.
is totally different than service sales. And so that's another thing, that building that kind of defensible, repeatable kind of go-to-market motion is something that's taken some time for myself to get used to.
Yeah, I hear a lot of times people in sales and like SaaS, they're telling me that even if they try to throw like free trials and stuff, it's still super hard. Like people don't,
Nobody
even if
wants
you,
to talk to you.
yeah, yeah, even if you have the best product, they don't care. Like it's not about the best product and
It's
how,
not. Do they trust you? And I mean, that's number one. And do they believe that you're going to be around? So I think like
yeah.
one of the challenges in application software in Japan is just staying power. Like just the fact that we're going to be going into our third operating year, or our fourth, sorry, we're finishing our third, going in our fourth full operating year from July, in a way is kind of validating us to certain types of organizations here because we're still here,
Yeah, those are the ones you
right?
target, right? The ones you target, the size you're targeting, they value like longevity and like
Hmm.
I mean, for me, having a new agency, trying to sign a bit bigger clients has often been an issue where I had to go through partners of mine
With a
with more
vendor.
long. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's tightening up, right? And like politics aside, like I think a lot of the world is like Doge everything right now when it comes to like software spend in particular. Like CFOs are just getting a lot more scrutinous on spend and
Yeah.
ROI. And like there was an interesting thing that I came across on the pricing in our category in mid-market enterprise in the US relative to Japan. And there's like a factor of 30x difference in certain categories on what they'd spend in the US relative to what they'll spend here. And so what that tells you is one, they're overspending like mad for software that they're probably not fully utilizing in the US. And two, it shows you that here they're probably underinvesting, but they're a lot more conservative. And so you're gonna have to work that much harder for less money. But I think over time that pricing power increases. I think if you kind of put that together, really kind of getting to the core of like really what they're looking for is stability and value delivered, not sexy widgets and things that can like, not in the enterprise segment at least.
Kind of a quick question, but like when you, for example, you guys are hiring for bigger companies and stuff, you already establish a certain amount of trust, right? I mean, does that help to sell the ZooKeep solution? Or it's like when you're talking about ZooKeep, it's like you're a new person, so to speak. It's like there's a refresh button and
No. I mean, a little bit, right? Like for clients that we worked with for a long time or have contacts in, yeah. I mean, it does help because still, especially in Japan, it's still relationship driven. It's still very trust driven. Again, for right or for wrong, it's still very sales led. Like product led growth in the segment's very difficult. So you still need to go and sit and talk to people. One of the other things for us that we found though is pairing the software with like an RPO offering in the short term allows us, one, to increase the probability of actual adoption and influence process redesign, and two, it really actually helps our client to show the ROI more quickly on. So that leads to this. And so what we're finding here in Japan is even if they like your software, if they're not confident that they themselves can operate and use it, it's better to give them the pair of the expert with it and then let the expert go away as a go-to-market mechanism. So like in the US, this doesn't fly as much, but here, this is the delivery mechanism to ultimately, hopefully help them internalize and develop their own capability and then like leverage that software. Again, going back to like why we started the company in the beginning is like we want to help companies build these competencies in-house. Like that's ultimately what we're anchoring on, right?
I have the same kind of vision in sense. That's why we do all those events, we do the podcasting. It's just helping the client to kind of need us less, have more alignment as well, and like, I mean, just value, right? Like you said, like,
I mean, mate, I'll call it out here. I have no issue, but like the recruiting market structure in Japan is just completely fundamentally flawed.
It's a glitch.
Completely.
There's a glitch in the matrix right there, right?
I mean, it's so flawed, and the conflict of interests are rampant throughout the industry across almost every segment. And this is coming from a guy who's a recruiter, and like I love recruiting, but I think that there's a time and place for certain types of recruiting. I think executive search delivers immense value, but I still don't understand why a mega enterprise automotive maker needs to work with a recruiting agency to hire a 9 million yen a year application engineer. I don't understand why. Like I know there's labor dynamics. I obviously get that, but they could do that job if they wanted to. Increasingly they want to, because they're seeing the dependencies and they're seeing the strategic shortfalls, or they're under cost pressures or whatever. Like there's a bunch of different reasons, but so I think helping them internalize this is like, that's a big part of it.
I mean, the fact that often, companies or clients out there feel like, oh my God, I'm paying so much money for a resume. It really means they don't see any value beyond, what you're providing, right? Like I remember talking to some clients in the past, and I was like, we want to do a little bit more, but the market is like the conflict of interest, like the way we're billing and like the percentages, like so many weird things. We're working more and more on flat fee systems.
Yeah, I think it's smart, right? And the percentages are such because like talent availability is scarce, but like at the end of the day, like what we do is not rocket science to a degree. Like our clients could internalize this. And if you take a step back, right? Like there's a Japan market dynamic on this. But then there's like the broader kind of workforce optimization and like talent accessibility issue that quite strategically a lot of organizations are struggling with. And what that means is they're having to go beyond Japan to procure certain types of talent. I think it's very, very, very well known that my team and my company kind of helped to launch the Woven by Toyota group. And a big part of that was talent accessibility to accelerate autonomous driving, right? And I'm seeing this not only in autonomous driving, but in other areas across the economy. And like the moment strategically as a headquarters, you're trying to go and tap into other talent markets, if you don't have any degree of internal hiring, talent management, role scoping, requirement setting type of capabilities. In my experience, like a lot of times that operation
Mm.
just falls off the cliff really quick. Like they really struggle, right? And I've seen this with other client examples over the years. And so I think like one of the biggest challenges facing Japan is its workforce. It's a total crisis at the
Yeah.
moment. So yeah, I think anything that you can do, anything I can do, any of us can do to kind of help contribute to more sustainable organizational development or workforce optimization, I think
Yeah.
actually helps Japan and helps all of us.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree, man. And I feel the same way about Japan. Like I have a good life here. I like this country. I have a kid. I want multiple kids. It's a good country, but it's not hard to see the problems. Like for me, just like taking the bus in the morning, for example, the amount of older people compared to young people, like you can see it. Like it's really obvious. Like trying to fill in a position that is not that hard normally, so hard beyond just tech. Like it's pretty scary. Do you think AI can help a lot there? Not in terms of
Okay.
productivity, but for me, I think the language barrier is a big one. Like if we
Mhm.
can solve language barrier and visa and bureaucracy of immigration, for example, I feel like it's not that hard to quickly bring in a lot of people. Like what's your thinking on that?
Culturally, I think that there's going to be a lot of barriers, right? It's a conservative country, and what 70% of people who actually vote are over 60, I think, or it's in that neighborhood. So it's the elderly that are voting and driving the policies. Whether or not we import a ton of people, which by the way, just for the record, I think we're going to. I think we're going to bring a ton of people in. I do, but I do think that there's going to be a lot of societal challenges. Language is a barrier, so of course AI is going to break that barrier down. I also think AI can be good for accelerating things on legacy systems, like layering in AI on top of like really antiquated
Yeah.
Frankenstein together legacy enterprise systems. Actually, like one of the biggest problems of DX is like all the process change that you have to go through. And if you don't have to change your processes and you can just layer something smart on top that can go into all those data sets like we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier, I actually think that's an incredible opportunity for Japan. So in a way, Japan could leapfrog. You know, it's famous the financial institutions here's IT systems still run on COBOL, right? Like
Mm.
they're really antiquated and super spiderwebbed. And what is it? Mizuho's the place that system integrator consultants go to die or something. That's like the joke because you can't solve it, right? It's like the unsolvable
Yeah.
problem. Um, I think like AI will help on that sense. I do think AI can help on the language barrier, but the deeper issue is like the OS, the organizational OS, how work gets done and will people accept, and how do we bring in different
Yeah.
types of people if we go down the foreigner path. And I saw a really interesting thing on Japanese TV about 6 months ago about this like shipbuilding company out in like Hyogoken or something, and they're really really advanced in their onboarding of foreign kind of labor. I mean, like 70% of their workforce is foreign. They're from all over Southeast Asia and Bangladesh and stuff. And they're really thoughtful on education. They're really thoughtful on acceptance of different religions and different things like that. And so, you know, I think the problem is way bigger than language. I think it's when you're a
Yeah.
monocultural kind of society that is conservative. I think like there's gaps, and so whether or not you
Yeah.
import those talent or just for example, you just hire them where they're at and figure out a
Yeah.
different operating model. Like, and you can't do that for like blue collar, but you could do that for knowledge work, right?
Yeah.
So
And you have a way broader perspective than me. This is one of the things that I see for myself. I'm like very narrowed down in my little niche, my little world, and what I see is
yeah,
just what I live, I guess. And
but we
yeah,
all
the
do, right?
cultural,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah, and I've been here for 20 years, and so I've kind of seen different angles of this. And like my brother's married to a Japanese, all my nieces and nephews are Japanese, so I'm like I'm pretty entrenched at this point, I feel.
yeah,
So yeah, like I do want to contribute here, and I do think there are tons of organizational societal challenges that this stuff can tackle. But for anybody to say like this is the silver bullet and that's going to solve the problem, I think that's an
oh yeah, no,
oversimplification.
I think it's going to take some real deep pain first for people like you know, to accept that okay, we need to go through cultural changes. I mean, I my wife's grandparents still don't want to talk to me. You know, I've been married for 5 6 years, 5 years now. You hear like you can just see that some you can change certain people, and I think
Mate, I
certain
mean
age and
the first time I met my wife's grandparents, I got out of the car and her grandpa said, "Oh, the Martian arrived." Kasejin. It's like, "Oh, how you doing, Grant?" Right? I ended
yeah,
up getting really close to him, but again, is it really that different like where I grew up?
exactly.
You can't blame people for
Yeah, no, that's the
being
thing.
raised in a different era. Exactly, right? Like it
No,
is what
that's
it
the
is.
thing. Exactly. Yeah, no, we'll be the same if we were in their shoes, and absolutely. Like I love Japan. Like I feel the same kind of love to the country, even though I don't speak Japanese, so I'm going through like a different day to day than you are going through. But I still love
Yeah.
this country, and I want to bring in positive impact.
Maybe you to Japanese was like me to software engineering, right? Like
Yeah.
it can be painful, right?
Yeah, man, I've studied though. I tried, and now my last hope. My daughter is like 2 years and a half, and it's getting ridiculous. Where she's talking to me like I'm like a little kid. So she's teaching me Japanese now. And I told my wife this is getting out of hand. Like I need to really study a little bit harder again and get back into it. But yeah, I mean, life just catches up on you.
Life,
Yeah. What's the biggest challenge you had to overcome so far with ZooKeep, would you say? Like from the 0 to 1 phase, like what was the hardest thing that you remember?
getting the product customer ready.
Yeah.
There's one thing having a product that functions. There's another thing having a product that will pass like all the security checklists that are like that thick and all that type of. So
Yeah.
having it like truly we call it industrialized or whatever or customer ready. But like
Yeah.
everybody walking into this told me, Casey, you're an idiot. It's going to take 3 years before you even sell the product in a meaningful way or even have it ready to be sold. And I'm like, we'll figure this out. Like, come on. Like, we're good. Like, and like, sure enough, like, we didn't really aggressively start selling the product until last year. Like, we had like sold it and we had like beta clients and stuff like that. But it took us 2 years to kind of start selling it. 6 months into that, we
Interesting.
realized we had like two glaring missing like features that we thought we could sell without them. Like, we knew we knew it. It was a known, but it like started
Mm,
handicapping us, like kneecapping us on sales. And so we actually kind of stopped selling for 3 months.
oh
Like
wow.
of course, if like leads had, we'd sell, but we weren't aggressively like burning leads. And here we are like 3 years in, and we're about to go live with our largest enterprise deployment to date in the summer to be about 700 users. It's gonna be
Nice.
sweet. So like, that's, I think getting that ready is, I'd say functionally been the hardest thing. And then I'd say like personally or psychologically, just the patience of that. Like, again, I'm used to being
Yeah.
a recruiter. I'll go get a rec and work a job and like get a sense of achievement because I like knocked out a CFO search in 4 months or something. Like you can get in
Yeah,
Japanese,
yeah,
they say
yeah.
taseikon or something, right? But like, yeah, so
Yeah, and
that's the
even
patient side of it's tough.
when you feel like it's ready, how certain can you be it's ready?
It's never ready. At the end of the
Right.
day, like this thing is going to have to be polished and refined, and the
Yeah.
technologies are going to change and user needs are going to evolve. And like, from the time that
Yeah.
we started until now, like obviously Chat GPT came out, like the way that you interact with data today, you and I have both been reprogrammed to have like a semantic natural language query. I don't even use Google anymore. I just go to Perplexity.
Wait, what's
Like I don't
Google?
even, my kids are going to say that, right? Google was like the classroom application that I use, right? Or something like, so I think like
Yeah.
the expectations on how you interface with software or with data is going to change. And so the product's never going to be ready, right? Like we're going to
Yeah.
always have to.
And you deal with data, very sensitive data. Like that makes
Mhm.
it even harder, right? Like, interesting.
But that's why I had to hire a killer team around me, right? Like I've got the
Yeah.
product vision, but I don't have the skill to build it.
How hard was it for you to I guess hire for your own team compared to recruiting? Because I looked at my year and a half so far journey, and the top three of my biggest fuck ups is like hiring actually. Like, which is ironic. Like I'm a recruiter, but I can't hire for myself. Like I made every mistake possible. Like was it the same for you? And especially hiring software people, man. Like it must be really,
So
really tricky.
so look, like there's a difference in hiring as opposed to like managing the people. So in a sense, like you succeeded in hiring, right? Like you didn't fail in the hires, you succeeded in the hiring, but what you failed probably in was like the jobs to be done. So having clarity on like the actual work that you needed done and then
True.
holding them to that work that needed to be done. And I've made the same mistake. And I think especially when you're in a startup and you're in a pinch and you're desperate for help, like sometimes you'll make a decision in haste to just throw a body at the problem, which in my experience just turns into a bigger problem.
Hmm.
So, we've had a couple of challenges, but I think that's just part of the process and you learn from them. But at the same time, we've had some absolutely incredible hires as well. I mean, like killer, like how I have certain members in this team still boggles my mind. Like I'm super proud of the team that we have right now. And the thing is like we've got a really eclectic team. Like we have a team from very different backgrounds. My head of go to market, Fuminori, was one of the founding heads of SoftBank Robotics, and then helped sell Make Leaps to
I met
Rico.
him. Super interesting guy. I had a
He's
chance to
killer,
chat to him.
right?
Yeah.
And he's a native German speaker. He's Japanese, was raised in Germany, but has been doing like enterprise digital innovation. And then like Satomi and my team was out at Lincoln Motivation as like one of their core senior product managers and general managers for human capital development. Like we've got some incredible people. We recently hired a new head of engineering, Paul Brenner, and Paul's exited from a financial data platform in New York, and he's one of the most brilliant people I think I've ever worked with. And then Jordan Jarjora was Google's head of tech and product talent
Mm.
acquisition for 7 years in Asia. I mean, like Jordan's incredible. So, and then that's not even going really deep into like my client services team with Aoki-san, who recently was like the CHRO of Morelli and KKR's lead HR advisor, and
Mm.
the team that Ueno-san from Recruits built. Like we've got a really, 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 really critically amazing team.
Yeah.
So, I'm going back to your question. I'm really proud of, the ones that have worked out, and we've had some mistakes and challenges, but I don't think that's a hiring problem. I think that's a talent
Yeah.
management, like scoping the role and actually performance managing the people. That's a different skill.
Yeah. Man, it's impressive what you're doing, honestly. Like, I know you were like, I don't know what's driving me, but I'm still so perplexed about it because I feel like there must be days where like, I don't need all this shit. I don't need all this pressure. And the fact you keep going for it. And like,
Every week.
I love it, man. I respect it. Like, I do really respect it.
But at the end of the day, man, like you gotta take it in stride and see it for what it is. Like at the scale of the universe, these problems aren't problems. And like, you know what I mean? We only make them as big of problems as they are allowed to be made. And so I think also learning how to kind of like let stuff
Yeah.
just go through you and not like stop in
Yeah.
your head and go in circles in it, which I used to do a lot more.
Yeah.
And I'm very self-critical naturally. I had an exchange with my business partner about that this morning as well. Like I can be very self-critical. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but look,
Mm.
like I like to build. I cannot sit still.
Yeah.
Like I can't. I think you've seen me like even shaking as we're talking. Like I've just got a lot of energy. So
Yeah, no, I can tell. And what's I want to because I guess you could qualify yourself right now if we had to add an extra title, like maybe a product manager, right? You become technical enough to qualify yourself as like a product
I think so.
manager. This is
Yeah.
something I want to get into myself in the future. Like
Yeah.
I like to have multiple hats, and like I've been more and more vibe coding all this stuff, and it's terrible. Nothing works. Nothing ever works. But time always beats it. Like I know that if I put enough time, I will get somewhere. What kind of advice would you give to someone like me with my background, sales guy, who I hate to build it myself. Like the hands-on coding is something I hate, which means I will never get very, very good at it. But I guess I want to have a high level of literacy to be able to give a vision to people and really be part of the process. Like I guess
Hmm.
pretty much what you're on right now. Like,
Hmm.
what kind of advice would you give to someone like me who wants to make that transition?
That's a really hard question. And before I answer your question directly, I think one thing to predicate this on is I think the role of product management is evolving. Product management kind of originally came out as this like coordination and communication synthesis between engineering and commercial needs.
Yeah,
But that coordination job itself, the value is actually decreasing significantly, I believe. I think like that
I agree.
job I think is going away. So I think in general going forward, I think there's probably two types of product managers in the world. There's the technical product managers who can understand product strategy and build it. That's not you and me. Then I think that there's the domain expertise product managers who know something, a workflow, a business function, an industry, a region, something very, 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 very well. And they understand the problem statements. And then they can communicate those problem statements into chunks enough that people can distill down into what to build, right?
Yeah,
I think that's what you are, and I think that's what I am,
yeah,
clearly. And so usually those types also need to own the revenue side of stuff. So you tend to be a little bit more marketing or a little bit more sales oriented product management.
right. Yeah.
So advice I would give to you, let me think about the advice. I think the first one, the first one is just to pick a problem statement and try to build it and validate it in its rawest form, like in
Hmm.
its rawest form. So I think like just start building something is number one. But number two, get mentors that really care about the problem that you're trying to solve. Because I find there's a lot of mercenaries that will like take your money because you don't know what you're doing. But
Yeah.
they're the ones that are the best are the ones that don't want any money. They want to actually help solve the problem. So I think like the advisors that really care about either you personally or the problem that you're solving,
Mm.
And it's so funny, right? It's like, it's kind of like with investors sometimes. It's like the person who cuts you the smallest check gives you the biggest value.
Yeah.
And like they've literally paid you to then do free work. Whereas if I asked them to help me, they would want me to pay them, right? In a way. And you see this in early stage startups. And so like I think like
Yeah.
taking that same thought process, and of course their interests are aligned, but like
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that will sell you boot camps and advisory services and fractional CTO stuff. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
in my experience, it hasn't gone well. And I fell into that trap like 5, 6 years ago. But like in my experience,
Interesting.
like you got to find that philosophical or emotional alignment with somebody who's done it
Yeah.
and try, and fill your gaps and then, and learn by doing, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of where I'm at right now is I'm putting myself like around 5 to 10 hours a week right now at the service of other startups that have like some kind of product to just do sales with them. And in return, I want to
Mm,
be part of the development. Like I want to know what they're
mm,
talking about. And I'm kind of just putting myself out there as free service. Because I have, like you said, as a recruiter, the amount of connections you have, we make a living by meeting people. It's
it's
like that's
incredible.
what people can't do, right? So that's what I put on the table for startups usually. And I'm just kind of, just looking at stuff, trying to get them leads, and in return, I'm looking at the product and I'm just learning, I guess. But yeah, like I
I mean,
agree with the
the other
whole.
piece of advice, listening to this, so like the other piece of advice I would give, and again, it took me
Mm,
until the pandemic, kind of like sitting around, like really thinking about like, what the hell do I want to do with the rest of my life? You got to find something that you're quite passionate about solving yourself. If it's purely 100% only financial, like, oh, that's a huge market, we're gonna go kill it. Or and like, I don't know that I've hardly ever seen that work. I mean, it might, but also if you want to do it in this country, I don't think you or I have the domestic enough
absolutely.
relationships to do anything at that type of scale anyway. So I think like you got to really find that problem statement that really resonates with you on an
Yeah.
emotional level and and commit a certain amount of time or money or something and like get after it, right? Like
Yeah, no,
that's what
I
we're
agree. I
doing.
agree, man. This is where I'm at right now, where until now I chased money, like that was the main drive, like financial freedom and stuff. And now I'm like pretty okay, safe, I would say. But I need that new drive, like because I like pressure. Like I like pressure. I like
I love
to,
it.
right? Nobody can seem to understand when I'm saying this, but I miss having pressure. And right now I'm looking for that new thing. And one of the things, man, I knew that was going to happen. I'm
Man,
completely going off
you should come
script.
talk to us at ZooKeep. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, absolutely. Like one of the things that I'm looking into is building very like how to say I want to support more recruiters to go solo. Like the amount of recruiters that are really, really good at what they do, but are just in the wrong environment is insane. Like, I mean, I don't want to go too much into
So
detail. Yeah.
super shameless plug,
Mm,
but we've recently started doing that in my other business. So kind of
yeah.
helping sponsor and providing infrastructure and capabilities as well. And so it's like I agree.
Okay.
I like so that's something
Let's 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 meet
I
and
can get
talk about
behind.
that because I have some developers very excited about this, ex recruiters as well. Like I'm having some people with me right now that's I think there's a massive opportunity to help a lot of people and raise the bar of the industry. Like to what you were saying, I love recruitment, and it's the amount of times that I'm like I hear bad stuff about recruitment and stuff. I'm like, man, this is not the reality that I'm living in. I love this. I do it for everything that this
Yeah,
job has to offer, and there's a
I
lot of
agree.
people out there in the wrong environment, and the amount of stories I was
Toxic.
told, yeah, it's toxic, man. And
Yeah,
everyone
man.
has a limited amount of fire in them, and if you're in the wrong environment, you're gonna waste it, right? So,
I mean, look, so like
awesome.
I'm again like emotionally, I'm super supportive of anybody that wants to try to go do their own thing, and I believe that's what we need more of. And this wave hit London like 10, 12, 13 years ago of like people going out and setting up solo shops, super specialized, super focused. It kind of bled towards North America where you got it in like New York City and Los Angeles, like on the coasts more, frankly. And then like now we're here. And so, I think it's a natural maturation of the industry. Frankly, I would love to help as many people go independent because like I think I would severely struggle to go take like a job ever again. Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
can't.
the hairs on the back of your neck stood up, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and all right, we'll talk about that for sure then, because I have some cool ideas, and I'm sure you already had them as well. So maybe there's
yeah.
something interesting there. Fire questions before we finish up, Casey. I don't want to hold you on too long. As a father, how do you plan to prepare your kids for AI and the tech world? This is one of my biggest stresses at the moment is like, how much do you put AI in a kid's hands, and like, how do you plan to crack that code,
I love it.
father
This
to
is like
father?
talent man. This is talent management in its purest, most emotional form. Okay, so if we future cast 20 years from now, because my kids are 7 and 3, it's probably going to be a G world. I'm guessing maybe G. Data is going to be at their fingertips. The AI models that are already blowing our minds will be completely ubiquitous, and in Japanese, atarimae, like just a given, right? I think when we think about that world, and then we think about like 25 years ago when I was growing up at like 13 in the early 2000s with IT going nuts, I think we had STEM go crazy to fulfill how to raise kids, right? And so we talked about like future casting 7G, probably just edit this. And then like if you go backwards like 25 years ago, STEM became all the rage. And what happened in education was like I think a lot of things like the humanities and liberal arts and history and communications, all these types of majors got very unpopular, and also frankly like people wouldn't pay for those jobs. It'd be very difficult if you were a history major to then go get a good job. Whereas I'd say 50 years ago, like anybody would take you because you got like big systems thinking and like world context, right? So I think if you future cast how ubiquitous kind of like AI and technology is going to be, I think what we're going to see is a pendulum swing on like the demand of people, and I think we're going to swing much more back towards the stuff that makes us inherently human, and I think that's what people are going to crave. So I'll be honest with you, man, like my kids don't have phones or tablets,
Hmm.
especially at a really young age. I'm really, really, really focused on building psychologically healthy kids that are comfortable with who they are. I'm really focusing on communication skills as much as I can. I'm also really focusing on appreciation of things like nature and
Yeah.
being outdoors and friendships. I try not to get overly involved if there's like a conflict within the kids. I think that they need to learn how to solve their conflicts, right? So for me, I'm much more indexing on that side of education, especially early childhood. I think as they get older, like we're gonna have to do a bit more math and stuff like that. And my oldest, thank God, she's smart and she's doing really well. But I think that's how we prepare our kids. Like you try to
Mm.
future cast like the exact skill set that they're gonna need, and also I think like kids learning coding today is like the biggest waste of time possible.
Yeah.
But again, like it's polarizing and people are all over this. But for me, I think it's communication skills. I think it's conflict management skills. I
Yeah.
think it's being psychologically comfortable with who they are, right? Like I think just having like a healthy ego is such an important thing.
Yeah,
So
man. I completely agree. I'm really on the same page. My conclusion, at least on this, is like everything my parents thought was going to be good advice for me was pretty bad. I mean, and they meant the best, right? But every advice or that I had as a kid was pretty much wrong. Like I remember as a
they're gonna
kid,
say it's
everything
wrong.
was yeah. And I mean, so I'm like you say, just give some values that make you feel comfortable as a human, like communication, like all this is
I think
that's a safe
all of
bet.
that super matters. And then as they get a little bit older, and I'm gonna start with my 7 soon to be 8-year old, but I think like financial literacy does matter as well. They're not gonna get that at school. And so I
Yeah.
think that's something that like we should as parents prepare our kids for, like understanding how budgets work and understanding, like basic stuff, right? And
I
then
mean,
eventually understanding that you
yeah.
need to invest and stuff like that. So like that type of stuff I think we'll get to eventually, and I'll be hands on with that.
Not sure where money will be in that many years, but we'll see that. I'm a big
Don't ask
believer
me
in.
about Bitcoin. Don't ask me about that. I couldn't
Yeah,
tell you.
I mean UBI, man. I think.
Yeah,
I mean
well,
that's a whole different rabbit hole we could
that's a
take.
whole other route, and then, like it could
Yeah,
become absolutely critical.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then again, it might not. Like there might be all these jobs that you and I have no idea about that get created, and like it's just different type of work. Who knows?
yeah. Exciting times, but like, yeah, I'm sure as a father, you're questioning a lot of things that you're
I
doing,
do.
and
I question it all the
yeah,
time. Yeah, yeah. But
it's
again,
good.
if you just focus on the stuff that inherently makes us
Yeah,
over-indexing on being human
yeah.
and under-indexing on becoming the bots, I think that's a pretty good place to focus.
Casey, look, I could go on forever. I completely went off script as I was expecting, but I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for your time, and let's have a deeper chat about what we just talked about as well whenever you have time. I know you're busy.
I'd love to, man. Yeah, I appreciate the follow-ups on getting this thing scheduled, and apologies for being
Ah,
so
you're good, man.
crazy. But yeah, man, hopefully I'll see you in Kyoto in July.
Yeah, let's try to do something. Still have to talk to the wife, but appreciate you, man. I'll let you go to your next meeting. Thank you so much. I will send you the recording before uploading anything, and I mean nothing really went bad, so not much to edit. But yeah, appreciate you, man.
No, likewise, Axel. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, cheers.
Have a good one, bud.
You too.